You are listening to CrossTalk, a safe place to discuss addiction, recovery, harm reduction, and everything in between. Support for this podcast comes from the Kentucky Opioid Response Effort and Advocates of Recovery. Content and production by the team at Turning Point Recovery Community Center. Now, buckle up and get ready for the show.
Welcome everyone to CrossTalk Recovery, the recovery podcast that supports all forms of recovery. I'm Matt Lewis and I'm here with Jeremy Zeller. Welcome, man.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it, man. I'm excited to talk to you.
Our pleasure. I wanted to have you on, like I was telling you a little bit before, because a friend of mine from Louisville turned me on to you a couple years ago because I write music. And once I got sober about 4.5 years ago, I started writing music and writing songs about recovery, about my struggles, about God. And so you're doing the same thing at a much higher level than I'm doing it. But she said, you should check this dude out. And you became an inspiration to me on a personal level because
thanks, man.
You're doing so good at what you're doing. And you've won music awards there in Lexington last year, and you're nominated for some this year. And you're touring and going and playing in churches and bars and all these places and trying to put this message out there. And you had all these list of topics of things that, if you want to talk about any of these, and I could talk about all of those things. Man.
Right.
I totally get that. And here working at Turning Point, and I'm working in recovery ever since I got sober. We obviously, mental health is a huge part of recovery and all the things. And so I just wanted to have you on, man, to kind of tell your story, what you want to share of your recovery journey, and what got you the passion to do what you're doing now. And we'll just go from there.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate it. Well, let's start with this. You got the list there. Pick one of those topics, and we'll go with that, man. God's put me in a position to tell my story, and I'm trying to do it with anyone that cares to listen. I believe that world peace starts with this stuff, man. It starts with us sitting down with each other and getting real, and not afraid to talk about our past or what got us here, and celebrating the end result, the lesson, the power that we are given by walking through the trenches of some of this stuff. So
that's so true.
pick a topic on there, man, and I'll tell you how it applies to me.
Okay, well, the only one that I can't personally relate to, so I guess we'll start there to hear your perspective on it, is the autism one.
Awesome.
So I have never had or been diagnosed with autism, but I know people who have, and I know that's a big part of your story and your journey and discovering that and how it all started to make sense for you. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I guess ultimately my autism journey starts when I was a kid. I didn't know that I was autistic. I grew up in the, early 70s, 80s to the 90s, and that autism wasn't even in the zeitgeist at that time. My parents were in the church. So, in the church, the mental health world is almost a separate thing, especially back then.
Yeah.
And so, I had certain individuals, teachers at times, doctors at times come up and ask if I had ever been diagnosed or if I had ever been to therapy for it or anything. And I said no, because up to that point, I didn't know really what autism was. I had only associated it with, honestly, I thought it meant mental retardation at the time that, people were talking to me about it, just because I was so uneducated,
Right.
So I was just ignorant is all. And so as I began to walk through my own journey, as a pastor, I would work with special needs kids. And then ultimately I began to raise a couple of special needs children myself. And, they were nonverbal autistic. And so, I was kind of diving headfirst into their world to try to understand. And at the same time, I began to going to therapy for myself, and not for autism, just for therapy. And suddenly I found myself in front of a therapist that was telling me that he needed to hook me up with a specialist that dealt with autism, and that he thought this might be something that I really need to check out. And so from there, this was when I was 45. I sat down with an autism specialist, and we met a couple times over the course of those months. And then finally, by the time I was 46, I was convinced that I was autistic. You know, the hardest part of my journey was me, I guess, accepting the diagnosis, because for me, it was a very, very sensitive thing. It's not something that I just want to say, oh yeah, that's me, if I thought that there was any shred of doubt. And what ended up happening is the overwhelming evidence of the other side began to show itself, to where I I would have kind of been foolish to not identify with myself with those thought patterns and those experiences. And so I went with it. You know, I looked at my doctor and I said, do you really think that I'm autistic? And he just busted out laughing, and he was like, yes, yes. And so it was just that was my moment of kind of my own self-hypnosis of expectation of what was and what was not, kind of you just snapped through his reaction. And so I accepted it and just kind of began to study my own brain through the lens of that. And, you know, then my very next appointment, I sat down across from him, and, you know, he had this smile on his face, and he was like, you know, how was your week? And I was like, it's like I suddenly see in color. It's like everything makes sense to me. You know, I wrote a song about it. It's called Judas Loves Jesus. And the opening line is, I suddenly see in color. And that whole song is about my autism experience and my own, I think my own redemption to myself, because I finally understood why I existed in the first place. And there was a lot more to it than just the autism. You know, there was, I was also extremely depressed. You know, I was also, you know, coming out of my own addiction. You know, by the time I was going to autism therapy, I had been probably 5 years removed from my addiction. And so, yeah, it was a pretty, or 3 years removed from my addiction. So it was a pretty intense time for me. And then also my father was dying, and he was my best friend. So there was just this, it was the perfect culmination for me to be able to remove myself from everybody, you know, go within a cave for a good chunk of time. Like for me, I went off on my own for 1.5 years, literally isolation, just me and the Lord trying to figure this stuff out. And because of autism, it made my mental health journey and the healing that has been brought through the own understanding of my experience. It comes second only to my relationship with Jesus as something that has truly awakened my spirit. And so, you know, autism is a massive part of what I'm trying to do. You know, I love to explain how autism relates to my songs. You know, I love the language that I use in my music. And I don't know that if I wouldn't have allowed myself to be what I am, I don't know that those songs ever would have come, you know, because they came specifically from this time of healing that I took myself through and that I sat with the Lord through, you know. So I'm grateful for it. I'm not an educator. I'm not going to, you know, hold a conference on the data, but, you know, I'm a guy that is working hard to raise the awareness of it. You know, that it's just, culture's not ready for the wave of autism that's coming, because now the data is there in such an inexplicable way, to where, you know, the sooner that cultures can accept not just autistic people, but everybody, you know, as soon as we can begin to accept everybody for who they had to be to make it here, you know, and understand that their now does not define who they were. And, you know, give people the grace of, you know, when they say, yeah, man, I went through this tough time, but, you know, I made it out on the other side, and praise God, I'm still breathing. You know, let's celebrate those instead of saying, well, I don't believe it. I don't think that you could really do that. You know, it's all about belief, you know, and it's a gift that we can share with one another. And sometimes it only takes one person. And if we all have this mentality of, oh my gosh, I might be the only person this person has to even express themselves to, and to accept them for that, man, that's where world peace is going to happen. It's, that's a movement that can't be stopped. That's an
Absolutely.
authentic movement of God. So,
Yeah.
and that's what I do this for, and so autism's a big part of that, and it bleeds into every other item on the
Sure.
list that you have there.
We'll be right back.
Did you know that recovery from substance use disorder and mental health go hand in hand? That is why the caring and compassionate mental health professionals at Four Rivers Behavioral Health in Paducah are here to help you find your balance. They are proud of you for making the changes necessary to live a healthier life and would love to see you reach your full potential. Give them a call at 270-442-7121 or stop by the downtown location at 425 Broadway in Paducah, Kentucky.
Hey y'all, did you know it's illegal to own just one guinea pig in Switzerland because they get lonely? Here at Turning Point, we don't want you to ever be lonely either. That's why we're open 7 days a week from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Always feel free to come hang with our friendly staff, and don't forget your guinea pig. We're located at 415 Broadway Street, downtown Paducah.
Well, I think about how often the mental health and recovery all like are connected. Very rarely is someone in recovery without struggling with some form of mental health. And for you to have addressed the addiction struggles before addressing that is impressive in its way that most people have to like address the mental health first to get to the addiction, to be able to combat the addiction, because we self-medicate and all these things. And but I agree.
I really appreciate you saying that. That it means a lot, because, that was an experience. It was an intensely lonely experience for me, my addiction. Because I did battle that demon before I addressed my mental health. I believe that is why I was even able to, by the time I had made it through my addiction, I clearly knew who I was in regards to my own divinity of being a child of God. Like, I was very clear by that time that, I made it through this stuff for a reason. Like, I'm still alive because,
Right.
and I began to experience the fullness of that, which is ultimately what led me to being open and being aware enough to listen to somebody that was very smart, that had studied my brain for a long time and could explain things to me, that did make my addiction make a lot of sense. I was not a guy that bought, I got pills by the time I was over, or by the time I was at my worst. I was taking 500 pills a month, 150 of which were pain pills. And for me, I would take 150 pain pills in 2 weeks, and then I would white knuckle it for 2 weeks. And then I would take them for 2 weeks and then white knuckle it for 2 weeks, with the exception of every now and then I would have a friend that understood that I was actually like legitimately in pain because I had a broken back at the time. And they would give me a pill here or there, my dad, the same thing. But all of that stuff made a tremendous amount of sense to me once I was able to step to the other side and look at the whole picture and see what I was going through and what I did have to, survive, and I did, and so I believe that you have the exact same gift in you. God is living your life with you through your perspective, in a way that only you and him can. And I think that there's ways that God can speak to you in the same way that he can speak to me, but he uses different circumstances, and we relate because of the experience, because of the emotion, because of the tragedy and trauma and suffering. We can relate, whether you're talking about the death of a brother or I'm talking about the death of my dad. It's those experiences that create humanity as one organism. It's the unseen that makes us cut together, And so, I appreciate you acknowledging that there was a lot of work that I did have to do that was completely outside of the realm of autism.
I always
So yeah,
give respect and props to that, because I know like the rehab that I went through, that I got sober in, they treat both aspects of it, the mental health and the addiction side. And I had never, like, I've struggled with bouts of depression and stuff, but I've never like been diagnosed with a mental health disorder, and I've never really struggled on that, which I am grateful for. But I see how much harder recovery is for those who do, and because it's not just like I got to quit doing these drugs and fix my life. It's like I got to fix how I'm thinking and everything, which recovery is that too. But yes, I
sure.
always much props to you for doing that, because that is a hard journey. And I agree with you wholeheartedly that, when I came through that program, and it, like, I came in there mad at God and blaming him for everything. But I came out of there having a relationship with him and knowing I had a purpose, and had learned to love myself again, and knew that my purpose was to try and help others. And so that spiritual journey through that 6-month rehab, and then continuing to work on myself and try to give back moving forward. Like for me, it was in rehab, they had a talent show. And I used to play in punk bands growing up and stuff like that. But always was, drunk and a mess. And, so I took the opportunity to write a song about my experience there, while we were there, and won that talent show. And that gave me, like, encouragement to, like, I should start doing this, because people will be able to relate to us, and start writing music with a positive message. And my whole recovery became about facing fears. And I have extreme social anxiety, and like all my life I was also a pill addict, but also an alcoholic. So I used substances to face every social situation I'd ever been in. And especially performing in front of people was like a huge fear of mine. But I decided that I wanted to, like, live courageously and start facing my fears head on. And so I started doing that, man. And at a small level, at first I just started writing and recording songs, which I love the creative process. And that's the main reason why I do it, because I just enjoy creating. But then, like, making videos and putting them out, and slowly, I started incorporating into my testimony and my lead. When I would go to different rehabs and talk, I'd be like, I'm going to tell an abridged version of my story and play a few songs. And that's what I was doing when I was turned on to you. And I was like, now this dude's doing the same thing at a much higher level and being successful at it. So that's something else I wanted to talk about, just because I have a passion for it. And I'm curious, like, what was the way you started doing that, and what do you enjoy about it, and like how long have you been doing it, and what was the progression?
Yeah. So I've been a musician professionally in one way or another for the majority of the last 25 years.
Yeah.
I started with the band Poor Man's Riches. We toured for about 8 years. Still have music on streaming platforms. I would encourage anyone to check it out, because I think it still holds up. So Poor Man's Riches was kind of where I started. I guess before that, where did I start as a musician? When I was a kid, I grew up and, my entire family was bluegrass musicians. So I was around that when, by the time I was 11, I was playing the drums well. By the time I was 15, I had at least learned a couple chords on the guitar. So then cut forward to Poor Man's Riches. That was essentially the year 2000 is when that journey really started. That's when we started playing shows out and about and stuff like that. So from there, toured with them for 8 years. After that, I toured with a band called Soft Like Fire, which is also on all streaming platforms, for 2 years. From there, I went into mainly worship ministry, whether being employed at one church for a long period of time, or I was basically a contract guy that would go around and help with worship teams all around.
Okay.
So I did that for a good number of years. Finally kind of settled into a couple long-term church jobs. In the midst of all that, I stepped off the road playing full time, and basically decided to at least give it 10 years, because I knew that my son So my son comes up to me in elementary school. This was back in the day. And, he starts tugging on my pants and he's like, Daddy, I think I want to play football. And I was like, oh man. All right. So I made the decision. I gave it to the Lord though. I said, listen, I'm gonna put this on pause for 10 years. And I pray to God that I pray you'll have me back, by the time Malachi is out and doing his thing. So now, I mean, Malachi's, he's doing incredible. He's a full-time firefighter, just graduated EMT school. So,
Awesome.
That all happened this last year. So, 2024 was kind of my first year of going, all right, here we go. And so, yeah, I found myself coming out of my journey, because what ended up happening over those 10 years of being off the road is my life fell apart, and I went through my own intense hero's journey that luckily I did come out of. But what saved my life, I suppose, was, I had left the church in 2017. I became an EMT after that, because I just still wanted to serve humanity in whatever way I could, but I had walked away from religion. And so I ended up getting a job after COVID, because when COVID came, they wanted us to take all the shots as an EMT. They wanted us to right off the bat, and there was no testing or anything. I was just like, I'm not going to do that. And so went and got just a factory job, good paying factory job. It was at Toyota. I was like, this is it. This is my life now. I found it. I can just kind of settle in and be comfortable. This is great. But ultimately what that job gave me was, especially the autistic part of me, it gave me a routine that I could numb myself without medication and just allow my hands to drill and screw in the way that they needed to, while I was still able to explore this new world that God was showing me that I was being called to. I didn't know what it meant at that time. I just knew, I really felt God saying, you better get ready, because I've got something really cool coming, but I need you to begin to do some work for me. And I didn't even know what that meant. I started trying to figure out, I didn't know if it meant I was supposed to do it, because surely it didn't have singing. I hadn't sang, my musical skills had gone behind the scenes. I had become the producer director. I was no longer the guy on stage.
Okay.
And so I was like, surely it's not my voice. I'm not that anymore. That was Jeremy from, a long time ago. So I was like, it can't be that. I love talking, and I love talking to my kids about this stuff. So, because we have a really open relationship. And so really at that time in my life, they were the only people in my life that even cared that I existed. And so I began to use my conversations with my kids as the content for my podcasting. I was just like, I don't care if anybody ever listens to this. This is not meant to mean anything to anybody but my children. That's it. And so I did that for like 2 seasons. Well, then I noticed, people started listening to it and chiming in, and I was just like, all right, this is not what I'm doing this for. So I stepped back, and then all the while, this thought of being a singer is still in my head. And so I finally was like, you know what? I mean, I guess I could at least try to see what my voice is like now. And so I started going and doing karaoke.
Okay.
All over the place. I went from Louisville to Lexington and everywhere in between. And I would walk in, I'd get a drink, I'd put my name in for a song. By the time I'm finishing my drink, they'd call my name up. I'd walk up there and sing the song and kill it and go on to the next place. I did that for a while I needed to be around people again. I hadn't been around people. I needed to get used to talking to people from the stage again. I needed to get used to singing again in front of people. So this whole journey for me has been very, very intentional. And so, since I've figured out that, I can sing, and I can write music, just like God was trying to tell me, but I just didn't have any faith in myself. I had no belief in myself. And so, but God changed that, over the course of time. I had a true moment of reckoning with it where, I found myself in my kitchen floor. I there's something about me that died in that moment that doesn't exist anymore. And I know that it's a moment that everyone can experience. There is a moment out there for everyone to experience the breaking of their ego, the breaking of who actually created them to be that. There's too many things that we're afraid of, because we feel like people are going to not love us if they know the things that we either feel or had to put up with or did. When the reality is those are the experiences that change us. Those, they're supposed to. If they do change you, and you find yourself in that moment where you can break away from the past into the now, that's where your real, that's where heaven on earth begins. That is the kingdom of heaven on earth, and it's here and it's now and it's ready for people to experience. But we live in a world that's hypnotized by a different language that the church has created and uses in pretty unhealthy ways sometimes. I love the church. Like, the church is my family. Like, literally, I see the Big C church. That is my aunts and uncles and brothers and sisters and parents and grandparents. That is, I was born into the church. I was raised by the church. I was employed by the church. I have a deep love for them. But in the same way that, if a holiday meal is going awry, I'm going to go ahead and peace out for a little while and let y'all argue amongst yourself. That's kind of where I got for a while.
Yeah.
Some of that has subsided because of my own purpose, honestly. I feel like, part of my purpose is to bridge the gap between two different worlds, both worlds of which are beautiful people. They're just almost afraid of the other. What I mean by that is the bar in the church, because I do as much work as I try to do in the church, I do in the bar. It's like, it's a worship service in a bar while people are drinking alcohol and enjoying themselves. There's no judgment from me anyway. I'm there to just spread the love of God right here. Let's do it right now. I'll sing a song about it even,
Yeah.
And it's like, I do the same thing when I go into a church. However, church people do not migrate with other people, and other people do not migrate with church people anymore. And it's created this really weird dichotomy of society that doesn't make sense to me as somebody that truly does understand the message of Jesus, truly understands why he died to leave it with us, and truly understands what it means to live in that kind of a mindset. It's not difficult. It's disciplined, but it's not difficult. It's actually really, really joyful to walk in virtue. And I don't do it all the time. I do it as much as I possibly can, knowing that at the end of the day, I've done the best job that I can today. And if I didn't, then I'll make up for it the next time.
Tomorrow,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Learning from your mistakes.
That's what I mean by celebrating the experiences that got us here, as ugly as they can be.
We'll be right back.
Hello, everybody. You want to know something? My biggest issue with meetings is, despite their name, they're never about me. Here at Turning Point, all of our meetings are for you and about you. We have meetings at least 3 times a day, 7 days a week. We are located at 415 Broadway, Paducah, Kentucky. Call 270-444-3621 for more information.
One thing I have always wondered is who put the alphabet in alphabetical order. At Turning Point, our goal is to help you put your life back in order. If you struggle or have struggled with substance use disorder and are in need of help, come see us at 415 Broadway Street, Paducah, Kentucky, or call 270-444-3621 and sign up for peer support services with one of our friendly staff who have lived experience with addiction. Hope to see you soon.
Yeah, it's about not thinking selfishly anymore, right? I believe, as a believer myself, there is a passage that has always stood out for me, and I'm terrible with addresses, but it's in Mark somewhere, and probably in another book as well. That talks about Jesus says, uh, "Sick people don't need doctors." That's why he's eating with the tax collectors and the sinners, and they were trying to criticize him for that. And like, we got to be willing to go into those dark places, so to speak, like the bars and the places where people maybe aren't, and testify about what we feel God has done in our lives. Like that's
including the church,
yeah.
including the church.
Oh yeah,
And
for sure.
there's some churches that are scared to death of a redemption story, and I don't understand that.
Yeah,
That's what
I don't
recovery
understand
is.
that either.
That's what recovery is.
Exactly. I mean, that's what the Bible is. If you believe in the Bible,
Yeah.
then you see like all of the disciples where, he called them from what they were doing to change, be redeemed, and come follow him. Uh, you know, I so when you're writing songs, like you said, you pull a lot from your talks with your kids and your experiences and your perspective through the autism view, and uh like what else like that, what does that process look like for you? Do you enjoy that? Is it a struggle sometimes? Do you just let it come? Do you set them aside and come back to them, or
Yep. All of
all of
that.
it? All of it. Okay. I mean, that's
I
that's
mean,
how that's how it is for me.
yeah,
So
like there's some songs that, they're written before I can even get the
yeah,
second
yeah,
line down. It's
yeah,
like it takes, less than 2 minutes to just scribble it out. I've had those songs. I've also got songs I'm working on right now that have been going on for about 20 years, and I just revisit them.
yeah. I have
Most
a
of the
lot of that.
time, most of the time, if it's not a song that hits just like that, most of the time, I I'm really intentional about taking my time. Like, I want every word, every line, every rhythm and rhyme. I want it to have a purpose.
Yeah,
And so I do a lot of rewriting with my stuff. If it's not just the whoa, this is amazing. I think I've
yeah,
got maybe 5 songs in my catalog that I've recorded that were just no brainers, done.
yeah,
Um, but the other ones that are primarily me being the singer and songwriter and musician, because when I was with a band, very different process. We had our own process for that. For a solo musician as myself, I just give the song all the grace and patience it needs before I consider it a done song. um
so you
so
don't
yeah,
play with a band now at all when you perform?
I do at times. It just depends on the venue,
Okay.
if they can afford a band, really, usually. Most of the stuff I'm doing right now, I'm still, trying to dig some pretty intentional roots into the recovery community and into the church community. And, that's not one that comes paying your bills very well at first, so, you got to lock down and do what you can to, get through that season of sowing, which is what I'm doing right now. I'm just sowing seeds right now. And I trust the process. I trust what God's called me to. By now, I do not have the same doubts and unbelief that I had going into this. I've proven a lot to myself that I
Yeah,
am a pretty good at what I do. And that there is a future and a hope in what I'm doing. And I'm holding on to those, and God is leaving me some pretty awesome signposts along the way, the lamps along a dark path that let
yeah,
you know which way either you should have turned, or the recognition of what you did right. And I've got a lot of those in my life now, and so I do have a tremendous amount of faith in what God's called me to do. And I know that he's called me to something way bigger than myself. And I just want to be a part of that. And finding the right people to do it with is the difficult thing for me right now, which is why I did a call out to podcasters. It's like, um, I'm not church enough for the churches around here. I'm too church for some of the bars around here. So
Gotcha.
I understand that. Look, I remember about 3 years ago when God kind of showed me what my life was supposed to look like, and in regards to my music and my storytelling and the theatrics of what I do, because like I'm an actor too, so I love doing videos and stuff. So,
Yeah.
and it's like I can remember stepping back and just going, man, this is like this would go over at a comedy club. I don't know if it'd go over at a church or a bar. This is a comedy club thing. But really, it's turned into this awesome thing that I didn't expect, because now, in the same way that I'm not church enough for the church, but I'm not church enough for the bars, that line in the middle that is inclusive of both worlds is starting to open up. It's like it's the people that understand what I'm trying to do, such as yourself,
Yeah.
are starting to say, hey, wait a minute, there's a guy that's doing this. There's a guy that's out there like doing what I feel like God's called me to be a part of in some way. Like, maybe we can work together. And that's where I'm at right now, is I'm still trying to find out who that community even is. The recovery community seems to be the closest thing to home to me right now. The recovery community and the mental health awareness because of autism. Those are the two places that feel most home to me, which is foreign because normally the church felt most home to me. But it's like God is raising up different people just at the right time in my story to say, hey, yeah, this is exactly the right path. You're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. And so I'm grateful for those, especially like this.
Encouragement is
to a fellow
important,
Kentucky
man.
fellow.
Yeah, man. Encouragement is important, and I love what you're doing. We have these like little recovery events, like spring recovery event, where there'll be like a bunch of people setting up trying to talk about their programs and stuff. And then I've played a couple of those, and then we here at Turning Point put on an event last October called Rock and Recovery, which was like people in recovery around here playing their music or singing a song. And it looked like this was the first one, and we plan on trying to do one every year. I performed at it. We had a buddy of mine that writes rap songs about recovery that he performed, and it was just like this weird mix of all these different people. We had people who were just singing karaoke versions of songs that meant something to them in their recovery, and it just opened it up to like everybody just express themselves, and it was a really fun event. And then, like I said, we've only done it once, so we're really hoping to see it grow and turn into and have people become a part of it, bigger acts than just like our small Western Kentucky community. But things like that are what encourages me, because I'm not out there able to try and make money doing this right now. I'm just doing it because I'm in the early stages to get to just like testify, right? And just like express myself. And because I enjoy primarily the creative process, it's like I like to get it all out, but then what do you do with it? So if I'm not getting a chance to play with somebody, or like I said, the longest time before I was even playing publicly, I was recording them and then making videos and just putting them out and just like, hey, check this out. I don't care if you watch it or not, because I had fun doing it, and it was kind of that. But it's like started to slow ball where people have been giving me the opportunities to do that. And I love that you're doing that, man. I love that. Hopefully I get to see your show, because that's the way I do. I'll tell like a bridge version of my recovery journey. And then in between songs, I'll kind of talk and share funny stories about what led me to write this song and whatnot. So, and I've never actually watched or been able to see your show like that you're starting to tour doing. I'd love the chance to be able to get to do that. It's really cool.
Well, man, we need to hook up and figure out a place in your area to come into. I'd love to.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll do that. And I appreciate you coming on, man. And like, I could talk to you for hours. I know that, but I'm sure you've got things to do. And I just, again, encourage you. I'm proud of you. Keep doing what you're doing, and good luck at the music awards coming up.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right, brother. God bless.
All right. God bless you, bro.
Check us out on YouTube, or listen to our audio version on Apple, Google, Spotify, Podbean, Amazon Music. And as always, stay grateful.
If you or someone you know is struggling with addiction or in recovery and needs guidance, speak with Turning Point's team of peer support specialists by calling 270-444-3621. You are not alone, and we are proof that recovery is possible.